It is April 30th, and we are live on a Wednesday morning here on WagerTalk TV. Andrew McInnis and Carmine Bianco with you, and we're going to talk about two of the three games taking place today. And both of the games that we are going to discuss find one team down 3-1 in their series. Carm, Montreal, Washington, and the Battle of the Sunshine State in Florida with the Panthers and Lightning. Should be a good day today here in the NHL. How are you?
Yeah, you said down. I'm down, man. A loss yesterday. I went out with some friends I haven't seen in a few weeks. A loss yesterday with Carolina and the puck line, Andrew, for me. Back-to-back losses for the first time in like 3 weeks. It's been since 9th or 10th of April since I've lost two straight games in the NHL. But yeah, that one kind of sucked last night in Carolina because they just didn't show up in the first period. They didn't look good. Kochetkov didn't look good in net, and then they picked it up and they played exactly as I thought. And I wrote up in my write up the second and third periods they played absolutely fantastic hockey. But when you fall behind 3-0 in a game and you're laying the puck line is never a good thing. Double OT, they eliminate the Rangers, or sorry, the Devils, and there's one team sent packing. We'll see if there's another one or two Andrew sent packing tonight. But Montreal, Washington. I wanted to talk about this one today because I know you are a diehard Habs fan. Uh, Andrew, you look at this line on this one, and you got to give Montreal credit. They've been feisty in this series. They got that big Game 3 victory against the Capitals, but then that last game at the Bell Center, 4 goals in the third period, a couple of them into an empty net. Washington gains a stranglehold on this one. I don't think Andrew. I don't think this goes back to the Bell Center. I would love to see more games in the first round of the playoffs because it's more betting opportunities for ourselves, for our live audience, and people watching it later on in the day. The more games, always obviously the better. You never want sweeps or even 5-1 or 4-1 series. But I'm going to take a page out of your book, Andrew, and I'm going to play the Washington Capitals on today's show a couple different ways, and that is team totals. The team total in the Caps right now is 3.5 minus 105. So a little shaded to the under. I think that the Caps are generating enough XG at home. And in their 3 wins, they've created XG of 4.09 on average. They're averaging about 4 expected goals per game. The laying the minus 105 with a 3.5 number at home is one that I kind of like. I get it that Canadiens are probably going to try and stifle them, play a defensive game, not many shots on goal, try and steal one, get it back to the Bell Center, and see what happens there. But I'm looking at over 3.5 goals for the Washington Capitals team total, and then if they get there, we're probably going to see some empty net goals in the at the end, kind of like what we saw in Game 4. So over 4.5, you're not going to like this, Andrew. Over 4.5 is plus 215 on the Washington Capitals. So give me over 3.5, over 4.5 Washington Capital team totals. Uh, are you going to block me on all social media channels?
It pains me to say it, Carm. It pains me to say it. It pains me to hear it. But you know what? Like the strategy that you're saying here is true. And you know, I don't want to bring up the past, and I know you probably don't want to talk about it. But you know what? That pick you had last night with Carolina, right? And I know that between you and I, we don't give out a ton of puck lines, but I think if I was you, when it goes to overtime, were you cheering for the Devils to win that game? Right?
You know, and I don't want to upset anybody who took like the money line. Like I watched Wager Talk today, yesterday as well too. Gianni was on at the top of the show, and he talked about how a lot of the money that he saw coming in was on the Carolina Hurricanes. It was coming in regulation. It was coming in full game lines. It was coming in. I think he mentioned puck line as well too. It was tied to parlays, money line parlays with some of the basketball. So it's one of those ones where when everyone's on one side, you start to worry, Andrew. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where everyone's on one side, and you start to worry. I still think it was the right side. Still think it was the right play. They won it in OT. I would make that bet 10 out of 10 times. And I know people say, well, you're going to lose it 10 out of 10 times. No, they just didn't play a very good first period. We saw what they did in the first 5 minutes of the second period, scored three straight, tied up at 3-3. Uh, this is a good Canes team that did not start well. And unfortunately, I was the collateral damage on that not starting well in that
Well,
game, Andrew. But to answer your question, when I lose a bet, whether it's my own bet or like any type of bet, because the game goes to overtime, whether it's a regulation pay or a puck line, and I haven't done a lot of puck lines at all this year as well too. Um, you almost want to see New Jersey win because you see one more game in the series at the very least. It's
mhm.
going to go back to New Jersey, and we get to see more NHL playoff games. Nobody wants a sweep unless you're a fan of the team. If you're betting on the games and your bets are settled once the game goes to overtime, I think you're cheering for additional games in that series. It's all about betting opportunities. It's not about being a degenerate gambler. It is about being a sports handicapper, and you always want another opportunity. It's just the way it is. It's why we have that little bit of grief after the Super Bowl, because it's like, what do we bet on as football fans? You would love for there to be more. So, yes, to answer your question, yes, I was kind of hoping that Devils would win um, and force a game six, Andrew. But with that said,
Hey,
how are
Carm,
you playing this game?
yeah, I wasn't trying to bring up any bad memories. My whole point with it is that for the most part, like you said, if you're stacking up on puck lines and you're stacking up on team totals, I feel like a lot of times when these teams win in closeout fashion, they go out with a bang. Either they hit the team total or they hit multiple team totals, or they hit the puck line or they hit multiple team totals, like you were just talking about with the Washington Capitals tonight. And I'm afraid that could certainly happen. However, one thing I'm going to say, which might sound a little bit confusing to people because we're talking on a show right now at 11 a.m. Eastern time, I think this game starts off lower scoring. I think that you could actually catch an in-game live number, Carm. I really do. I think that this game will start off slower. We've seen some fast starts in game 3. We saw a fast start. In fact, Washington scored first. Carrier responded. So there was 1-1 after one. Then we saw a couple goals in the second period. And then in game 4, it was a bit different. Like we saw more of a stalemate after the first period. And I kind of think it's going to be very similar to that as well in this one. Could be wrong. We could see Washington be really juiced up with their home crowd getting behind them. But I think that despite Montreal having that victory where they scored 6 goals, Carm, I'm still in the belief that as a Canadiens fan, the higher number of goals that get scored in a game tonight, the worse it goes for the Canadiens. So this is going to be a
Yeah.
bend, don't break, almost like the Habs are going to have to run the ball as much as they can, kill the clock, to use some football comparisons, and not turn this into a shootout, because if they do, I don't think it will benefit them, especially playing on the road. So if you look across the board at a lot of these totals we've seen throughout the playoffs, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5 in the Dallas game, then 5.5 again in the LA Edmonton game coming up tomorrow. But tonight, 6.5, heavily shaded towards the under, but seeing a 6.5 there, I do believe you can get an in-game live number on that Washington Capitals team. Now, I do think that your pick is a good one. I do think that taking the over team total for the Washington Capitals is right in that spot, that minus 105, that I really do like. Do I think we're going to get the best effort out of the Montreal Canadiens? I certainly do. They want to bring this series back to Montreal. They're going to need a little bit from everybody, Carm. But as you know, I'm a diehard fan here. I told people last night when I was doing my radio hit I told you about, I think that early start, we see a low-scoring start, and then we see the game pick up. In-game live over is, to me, the best bet you can make on this game. One thing I think is worth looking at, though, is an over on saves prop for Jakub Dobiš. Now that the series goes back to Washington, I think we're going to see a shit ton of shots in favor of Washington. When you hear the expression, a goalie will have to steal you a game, I mean, he made a couple fantastic saves last game, maybe a couple errors for him as well, but a goalie has to steal you a game in the playoffs, and this will have to be one that he has to steal. So I would look towards that. On the other end, Logan Thompson's number is 22.5 at minus 135, Carm, to the over. You know, do you think that Montreal is going to pepper him enough that maybe he could hit that over at 22.5? I think overall we could see a lot of shots from both teams. And speaking of which, I just have one player prop or one little same game parlay that I talked about on the blue line, and it's two guys that are just on incredible streaks right now. Dylan Strome over 1.5 shots on goal. He's hit this in 11 of his last 13 games. Juraj Slafkovsky over 1.5 shots on goal. He's hit that in 6 of his last 7 games. So I don't really want to lay minus 190s on a prop, Carm, and I know you get me with that. So we're going to put both those props together and turn it into a plus 116. I love these 1.5s, but the juice is so high on them.
I like that. Anytime, and you guys know, and my clients know, and I think I've said it on the show. I'm very leery of laying like huge vig because I think that even if you believe, for myself, every handicapper, every bettor out there, sports bettor has a different way of looking at things. But I think that you have to be very good at doing what you do when you're laying those numbers because two, 3, 4 losses in a row, and you can bury yourself. That it's going to take you a while to get out of it. So I don't lay the huge vig. So if you can turn a couple 190s that you really like into like a plus money one, yes, you have to win 2 bets in order to win one, but you no longer, if you lose one of those 190s, no longer have to win 2 to make up for the one that you lost. You're at even money. Anytime you can turn them into even money, I think it's always a good thing. Shout out to all the guys in our chat. Canadian Dad says yesterday was yesterday, today's today, and I get it, but there's some relevance of talking about like some of the things that we discussed yesterday and applying it to some of the games today. I was on WagerTalk today, and I got a lot of grief, not from the prez on the show, although he did give me a little bit of grief, but grief from my friends who, even though I said that because I thought it was a good spot for Ottawa and the analytics supported it. It was a good spot for Ottawa to take the plus 150 before it gets down to 130 or lower, and there's no value in the number anymore because I thought Ottawa was the type of team that could go into Toronto and win in Toronto, and that's what they did. They win 4-0, but I got a lot of grief for giving out that plus 150 on Ottawa yesterday. I can't do it with Montreal, Andrew, in this spot here because I think there's more separation between these two teams, Montreal and Washington, than there is in Toronto and Ottawa. The Leafs, going back to yesterday, are now, after yesterday's loss, 1-13 in closeout games. A game in which they can eliminate a team and move on to the next round. They are 1-13, their last 14 attempts. That one came against Tampa Bay. That's troubling because Ottawa's done a great job of shutting down the Stars. And speaking of which, that's what Montreal's going to have to do tonight. They're going to have to keep guys like Ovechkin, Strom, Tom Wilson, guys who are in the offensive zone. They're going to have to find ways, Andrew, of getting these guys off the puck, a little bit of body, but they've got to be careful. They can't draw any penalties tonight. And I hate to say this to you, Andrew. I don't think Montreal's going to get a lot of calls tonight. I think sometimes you get that home team cooking with the refereeing crew. So if you guys win, you're going to have to do it 5-on-5 tonight against this Washington Capitals team.
Well, you know what, Carm? You weren't here when I asked Prez this question, and I'm curious your thoughts here because a lot of people don't know this. And Tim Peel, who was on the blue line, the former referee, he talked about this, about how there's different officiating crews for every series throughout the series. in my opinion, I think, and the league thinks they're doing justice by changing the refereeing crew. I think it's the opposite of that. I believe it's the opposite of that, because what happens is you go from game one where Demidov gets tripped, Caulfield gets cross-checked in the face, Gallagher gets cross-checked in the face, no call, to game four where the slightest of interference, the slightest of anything got called. So we're seeing a time right now in the NHL, especially when we talk about quote unquote playoff hockey, that the referees are deciding what type of game they'd like to call that day. So where I'm sitting, I actually don't think it's a good idea that they change the officials from games 3 to games 5. I would love for the same two people to be out there for every single game in a series, because they know the calls they've already made. They know the players that are playing out there in the series, because if you have two guys refereeing game 3 and they're letting everything go, and then you bring in two guys that were just refereeing the Florida and Tampa series, they fly into Montreal and they start calling everything. The players are like, what the hell is this? 2 days ago, I could get away with cross-checking some guy from the behind, and now I can't even touch somebody on the shoulder. I don't think it's beneficial for hockey that they do this, Carm. The league thinks they're being smart. I don't think it's a good thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I love the idea of an officiating crew. You have two teams that have been picked for a 7-game series or been paired for a 7-game series. Give them the same officiating crew for the 7 games or however long it takes
Yeah.
for them. Because ultimately, then the responsibility is on that officiating crew to be unbiased and to be to whatever they called in game 1 they call in game 6, call in game 7. It's perturbing. It just drives me nuts that what is a penalty in the first period is not a penalty in the last 5 minutes of the third period of a close game. That's not for the refs to decide. It should be the same penalty. Absolutely should always be the same. However you call the game in the first period, you call it in the third period. Is why, across all and it transcends all sports. Football, if it's pass interference in the first quarter, it's pass interference in the last 2 minutes of a tied game in the fourth quarter. Let's be consistent, and maybe if you put an officiating crew with each series and they stick with that series, then it falls on them to be absolutely consistent throughout, or it's brought into question, and then the league deals with it how they may, with the the officiating union. But let's not get into that. Let's not go too far into that. But I like your idea of the same officiating crew each and every time, because as you said, a cross check in game 3 with a different crew that doesn't get called, but in something of a lesser degree in game 1 was called, and you're like, that's what sends the fan bases straight to social media with clips. How is this not a penalty now on certain players? So with that said, we're always going to complain, Andrew. It's never going to change. We're always, as fans, as sports bettors, we're always going to complain about the officials first and foremost, I believe.
Dan is asking us what we're talking about. Dan, if I'm being honest, we're just bitching. I am complaining. I got my fan hat on, even though this isn't even a hockey hat. I've got my fan hat on. I'll own it. I was wearing my fan hat for a second. But Carm, let's move on to the Battle of the Sunshine State here, Florida and Tampa Bay, the Panthers and the Bolts. A lot of times people talk about kind of the change of the guard, and Tampa was just top dog for many years. And obviously Florida wins the cup last year, and they were in the cup finals the year before that, and they just looked dominant again. And I'll tell you what, I was doing a post-game show for this game, and I left the room when it was tied 2-2. I was like, wow, okay, wow, awesome. A 2-2 game. We're probably going to go to overtime, which means I'm not going to have to go on my show for another like half an hour, 40 minutes. So I'm wearing my comfortable clothes, and so I'm going to my room to change into a nicer outfit for my post-game show. All of a sudden, I'm like, holy smokes, it's 4-2. I have to get upstairs and log on. Like the post-game show is about to start. they go from a 2-1 lead Tampa Bay, and in about 30 seconds, it feels like, just like that, they're down 4-2. And if funny enough, talking about officiating, Carm, Aaron Ekblad, who's now been suspended again, was one of the players that scored the empty net goal after that very vicious forearm to the head on Brandon Hagel. So it's interesting looking at this series here, Carm, because the funny thing is we kept on saying that Florida didn't care where they finished. They wanted to get healthy and make the playoffs. Tampa ended up as that 2 seed. They're back at home now. This series could very well be 2-2. It probably should be 2-2 right now, but it's not. It's 3-1. Do you think the road team comes in and gets the job done, or Tampa stays alive?
Well, I'm going to say this, Andrew, which should answer your question. I think this series is over tonight. I think this Florida team is so much better than Tampa Bay. It does look like it should be an even series, and Tampa Bay played some fantastic hockey in the last month of the season, then sort of tailed off, in the last 7 to 10 days of the season, and even at home have not looked good. And they lost the first 2 games at home. They had one even strength goal, 2 goals total. They get shut on the game 2-0. They lose the first game 6-2. You would have thought there would have been some bounce back in that second game. There just wasn't. You know what I mean? It's you discuss all the time that 5-game series, which is like the gentleman's handshake type of thing. Florida's not at home here. Obviously, they're in Tampa Bay, but I just don't see how Tampa gets it done tonight. The line is right there. The line's a pick 'em in a must-win situation for Tampa Bay. And even if you look at the guys who are scoring for Tampa Bay, it's not their stars. I mean, it's not the Kucherovs and the Braden Points, although Point does have, I think, a couple goals in this game. And Jake Gunsel. They're just not getting it done, Andrew. You look at three of the 4 games in this series, Tampa has failed to score more than 2 goals in this series, with the exception of the game that they won. Another unpopular opinion here: Florida wins a very low-scoring game, and Tampa stays under the team total at home. 2.5, under 2.5 is plus 120, Andrew. I'm ripping a page out of your book, whether you agree or not. I'm going team totals today on the show, and that is what I'm looking at. One even strength goal in 2 games at home for Tampa Bay. And they started the series at home where they could have taken control of this series, which they needed to do. I think it's too little too late for them. I think this series ends tonight, and one of those 3-1, even 3-2 type games where Florida gets to win and Tampa doesn't get many goals.
Well, looking at the odds logic page right now, opening number minus 125 for the Bolts, current number at circa minus 106. So it tells you a lot of what you need to know about this one, Carm. But I'm going to give you the old not so fast. We're going to be head to head on this one. And it's funny because I swear you and I don't talk about our picks before the show together, which makes it so fun. Because can we get a 1-0 finish for either team, Carm? Because I have the under 2.5 on the other team for my play. So,
yeah, 1-1 overtime.
Yeah,
1-1
is there a way that we
overtime?
Is there a way we can both win here? We'll try and figure out if there is a way that it can happen. But when you were away, I think it was like the final day of your trip. I had a 5% play on the Tampa Bay Lightning in game 2. And I was like, you know what? This is like second game at home for Tampa. Like them going down 2-0 at home would be crucial. They're so good when they get the last change. Vasilevsky is so good in bounce back fashion. And he only gave up 1 goal. The second goal was an empty net goal. So he gave up 1 goal and they lost. And so I don't want to contradict myself by how I've been saying in elimination games, we typically see a lot of goals. I don't want to contradict myself, but I do think that in bounce back games and in desperation games in favor of the Tampa Bay Lightning, they've typically locked it down. They've played really well defensively. Vasilevsky has done what he does. And to your point, Carm, like one of the player props I like today is Braden Point over 2.5 shots plus 120. And a big reason is just that they can't just have Kucherov and Gensel being the shooters. You've got no Brandon Hagel, and whether you like him or not, he's had a career year for the Lightning. You know, they need other guys to step up. They need Cirelli. They need Nick Paul. They need guys deeper down the lineup to play well. So I think that, you know, realistically, if this Tampa Bay Lightning team survives and stays alive here and shifts this one back to Florida, I think that they're going to have to play a lower scoring game. I don't want to take the under 5.5. I hate taking under 5.5 because games just weirdly find their way exactly on 6. So I'll take the Florida team total under 2.5 at plus 110. And Carm, if this game finishes at 2-1 for either team, we are going to be loving it.
I think so, Andrew. It's odd sometimes. You take an opinion on games, and this is why I said some of the stuff from yesterday is relevant to what I see. You know, I just haven't seen this Tampa team be an offensive juggernaut in this series. You know, Game 3, I think, was an exception to the rule. This is a good Florida team. We know they're a good defensive team, and I get it. You know, Ekblad's out tonight, but they've been a good team all season long, and they're the defending Cup champions. I think they want to end this series as quickly as possible. And that happened. You know, if it's going to happen, that happens tonight with this team. When a team isn't scoring, you know, like Tampa, you find it hard that they're without special teams being involved, that they're suddenly going to start to score a bunch of goals 5-on-5. You know, and we've talked about it. You know, they put up some interesting stats yesterday during the Carolina game against New Jersey in that series of 5-on-5. All of New Jersey's goals came the way of heading into yesterday's game came on even strength situations. No shorthanded goals, no empty net goals, no power play goals for them. Sometimes you have to look at the data that's relevant. It's similar to the opinion I had on WagerTalk yesterday about the fact that the Edmonton LA Kings game I felt was going to be an under. 6.5 was way too high. 4 high scoring games in the series. Yes, I get it, but it's uncharacteristic of a team like the LA Kings to play that type of style of hockey. I did think they would win the game, which they didn't, but 3-1. The over was never. What's the word I'm looking for here?
Live.
There was
Never
no way
live.
that over was ever going to come in, Andrew. It was pegged as an under from the get-go. First period scoreless, you know what I mean? A goal in the second period. I had no problems watching that game yesterday and feeling that I was ever going to lose the under bet on them. So I ended up splitting out on those two. They weren't play-in plays, but they're ones that I did put in because I thought 6.5 was too high. So it's the same thing here. I just don't see a lot of goals in this one. The one caveat of all of that is we know John Cooper, Andrew, and
Yeah.
you know John Cooper in a game in which they are trailing in the third period. He loves to pull his goalie and early, so they could be down a goal with 5 minutes left with an offensive zone face-off, and he's going to pull the goal. And you're like, what is he doing pulling this goal right now? That depends. Your feeling on him pulling the goalie is whether you have the total or whether you have the over or the under, or whether you have the Florida team total under, and you're like, God, don't pull the goalie now, right? So it is something that is interesting, Andrew, and is going to come into play tonight. I'm looking forward to watching that game tonight between these two teams. And as much as I like to see game 6s and game 7s, I'm thinking this one's over in 5.
All right. So you think we see 2 teams go to Cancun tonight, not just one, but 2 teams off to Cancun and booking their flights. We'll see if anybody can stay alive. And of course, we have Winnipeg and St. Louis, the only one tonight where the series is tied at 2-2. But I love the board tonight, Carm. I'm going to have more than just one play up at WagerTalk, including a big play. And number one at the website with these big 5% plays this year in the NHL. We've earned 48 units long-term in the NHL with these 5% plays. And a lot of them were actually plus money this year during the regular season with the team totals, whether it was plus 110, 120. Had a lot of success with these 5% big plays. So last night I cashed a 5% MLB play, my first 5% MLB play of the season. But full transparency, we did drop the play on the LA Kings. So it was a decent night, but not the best as far as the NHL is concerned. We'll try and bounce back tonight with our big play. But Carm, you know what? You've been on a long-term great run. What do you have going overall today?
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments from the guys. Listen, I get some people, because it was $5 customer appreciation day, and you pick up the package, and sometimes people who don't play NHL normally um, will grab it for $5, and they're upset and stuff. So while you were discussing this, Andrew, I sent a quick message to Melissa in our office. She's fantastic with this kind of stuff. So God bless her. She works tirelessly with all of us whining cappers and our customer base. So I asked her to create an NHL coupon for tonight's package, NHL 15. That's going to get you $15 off the price, which is, I think, and it'll be up after the show. It's $29 is the package, so it cuts it in half basically. And there's going to be 2 plays on it, 2 3% plays. One of them's loaded, one of them will go up after the show, and that'll be available. So at least my way of saying we should have won yesterday, but we didn't. And no opinion on today's Champions League game yesterday. Arsenal and Martinelli, man, that guy had nightmares last night. He missed 2 clear goals. Arsenal lose that game 1-0. Today is Barcelona and Inter Milan. I have no idea who's going to win that game, so there's no sense in me putting out a play on it. I'm just going to watch it live in-game bet it if the opportunity exists. So my card today is NHL and NHL plays only, and you can get up at WagerTalk. It'll be up in the next 15 to 20 minutes.
All right, Carm, that will do it for the show for today. Love the show. Love having just the two of us, honestly, to go back and forth and break down these games. But 32 minutes, and I know Dan counts down the time after we reach that 30-minute mark. So time is up for us here on PuckTime. Guys, smash that like button just the same as the Montreal Canadiens are going to smash the Washington Capitals. I mean, even if they don't win, please hit that like button. It helps us out quite a bit. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you guys right here, same time, same place tomorrow on WagerTalk TV.